Guys, fight commentary breakdowns, fight commentary chats. I got very, very special guests, Rokas, aka Martial Arts Journey, and of course, Ultimate Self-Defense Championship. Welcome, Rokas.
Thank you, Jerry, for having me. I remember we had a talk about the second season. Now it's fresh news, new big things. The third season is on the way. You're one of the first people that I am going to talk about this on record, though. So it's exciting. But yeah, I'm glad to talk with you again.
So let's start from where season 2 ended off. So what were your thoughts about season 2 / what were you thinking after you ended season 2?
It was a crazy experience because I talked about this a little bit in some of the behind the scenes videos, but maybe not everybody know that. First of all, when I arrived to Australia to film season 2, it took me like 6 months to put everything together, buy the flights, organize lodging and everything. It's just like, it took a long time. And then I come to Australia to do the filming. On the very first day, I get sick and like high fever. I feel terrible, no energy. I'm like, what is happening? And turns out it's full on COVID. And I was like so frustrated. I spent so much time to get there and to do it. And then, I was barely part of the filming. And then when I got back to Lithuania, for season 2, I was still the main editor. I had a little bit of help, but a lot of it was on my shoulders. And I was exhausted. I was just exhausted the entire time. And I was like, what is happening? Like, I don't understand. And then I learned I know some people are skeptical about it, but I'm not a scientist, but there's a thing which says that there's a long COVID, which is like an after effect of COVID, where you're exhausted for like an unlimited amount of time. And I gather that was probably what's happening. There was no other explanation. I went to doctors, I did tests, and I was good. Everyone's like, oh, you should be fine. And people are like, to a degree where people thought I'm faking, but I was like, I was dead. I had no energy and I have to edit the show. Luckily, I found some supplements and eventually I found a rhythm. And then somehow I managed to edit the entire show. But it was an interesting kind of a bittersweet experience because I discovered most of the show through essentially editing it. Because I was editing it, I was like, hey, this happened and this happened. And team members would tell me like, oh, this happened and this happened. But I was like, okay. But then I saw it on video and I put it together. It was still great, but I felt like I had only a part of the experience. And now jumping to season 3, I actually filmed it in my home country, Lithuania. I got to know most of the team members beforehand, and I was much more involved in every part of production. So it was a very different experience. And I'm not going to get ahead of myself, but yeah, very different from season 2.
When it's your baby, sometimes having a little bit more control, including not having to travel as much, is very important. It's almost like I didn't even put 2 and 2 together until it's like, it's not just, okay, you were sick and then, oh my God, like I didn't get to have as much control over the projects I wanted. But it's also like you traveled a long time. I mean, to go from Lithuania and then you had to go back with all the footage. And this time it sounds like, okay, well, it was right down the street. I'm being figurative, but It's like, okay, it's not as far. So it's like what I tell people is no matter what you do, try to save as much from the travel cost because mentally it's draining. So this time you just didn't have to worry about the traveling.
I mean, there were pros and cons. So first of all, you're totally right. Like, the trip itself, the jet lag, and it's just like, as I think Ranton said this to me, that, planes are just like these vacuums of germs, and, you're locked with these other people for so many hours and somebody's coughing and it's spreading everywhere. So it's so easy to get sick. Here I had more control even about like just my health in terms of like I was so careful about not getting sick for this season so that I didn't even go to training. I barely left home for the last week and a half. I was like, no, I'm not going to get into contact with like COVID all over again for me just to make sure I'm not going to get sick. So I had more control. But then at the same time, in season 1 and 2, I had help from Jeff Phillips. He was this facility, and then the scenarios, he organized them. And this time we decided to go our separate ways, and he created the spin-off show, the World of Self-Defense Challenge, which a lot of people still don't know about, but it's on YouTube. They can check it out. And I decided to do this. I involved a lot of help. Like the team was massive compared to the first 2 seasons. But this time I decided to go and create the scenarios as well myself. And I was like, okay, this is going to be an interesting challenge because, that used to be like Jeff's forte. And I was like, can I do it? Will I be able to do it? Long story short, I think it was very successful. I'm very looking forward to show and share the scenarios that were developed for this season. But at the same time, I also I was much more ambitious because I had more access. Like in Australia, I couldn't do much. I was like, it's the furthest country away. I don't know, only a few people. And so I left it to whatever Jeff can come up with. And I was like, okay, let's see what happens. But then in season 3, I was like, I can do anything. I can call people, I can go to locations, I can talk to them, I can negotiate. And so I went all out. I got like I thinking maybe like 8 different locations, like proper, I don't want to spoil things yet, no spoilers, but like proper relocations.
Wow.
We bought like, again, I just can't, I just want to avoid spoilers, but we bought like things like worth there was one purchase worth 1,000 just for a single episode, and I could do it. And so yeah, but at the same time, there was so much more stress and pressure on my own end, because like there's this location and there's this location and there's food and there's lodging and everything, and I had to coordinate everything. And luckily I had a great team. They helped me and we pulled it off. But there was so much more responsibility on my shoulders, and that was the downside, obviously.
One thing that I learned, so for viewers who obviously have been following me, they know I started really playing chess, right? And I'll tell you, the people who are really serious about chess before a tournament, they do what Rokas does. They're like, I'm gonna isolate. I'm not gonna risk anything because there's something so important right now. Socially, it's okay. You can see me after the tournament, right? So you had to adopt that mentality because again, it's your baby. Just like a chess person, like that, those 5, 6, 7 games he's going to play in a week, like that's his baby. He's going to make sure he's at optimal condition. So that's an unfortunate, but also a fortunate realization. It's like before major events, it's time to tell people, okay, you got to respect my boundaries, man. I'm not hanging out with you, sorry. Afterwards, we could do it, right? So that's something you learned. It's something that I'm slowly learning too. The second thing I'm super excited about is when it's your own production, you can just do much more. And it sounds like you really expanded both the production and the team.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like again, I had limited control over what's happening in Australia, and also that just the level of the championship keeps growing because there's more experience, there's learning from previous mistakes, and just I'm always have that mentality of wanting to push things further, to want to make things better, and now suddenly have access to all of these things. And I don't have huge connections with Lithuania because, funny enough, until now, still Lithuanians don't know me. Like even my wife today, funny story, she was traveling on a train and she was editing a reel for USDC. And a guy saw it and he's like, oh, what's this? And he's like, I'm editing this reel. And he's like, oh yeah, I saw something like really cool on YouTube. There's this show and everything. And she's like, well, that's my husband's show. And he's like, what? He couldn't believe it because in Lithuania, nobody knows about the show until now because we filmed it in Lithuania. I think we're going to make some waves finally. I was also much more apparent in the show. I'm the host, and I talk to the contestants and I introduce myself. So in season 2, you could barely see me because I was having COVID. But now, I think people will get more familiar. But coming back to the team itself, now I do have some connections. So for example, a friend of mine who's like a top tier videographer, so he films like the shows for the main channels, TV channels of Lithuania. And I'm like, the first thing, as soon as I locked in a date, I call him, I'm like, dude, we gotta meet for lunch. And then I'm like, can you, because he's very busy, I'm like, can you reserve this entire week and live with me at a hotel and do this? And he's like, okay. And he so he takes care of professional lighting, he has a professional camera, he coordinates all the other videographers, and suddenly we have this like highest level. Essentially, obviously we still made some mistakes and we learned some lessons, but essentially, like when people used to say in season 1 and season 2 that it's like, oh, this looks like a Netflix show, I'm like, now I used to be like, yeah, sure, and now I look back at season 1 and season 2, I'm like, oh my god, the level just is so different. Now it's hard to compare the two, and that's partly because there's a bigger team. And then also like Ranton, actually, he's season 2 contender. He loved the show so much, he came to Lithuania to actually support the show. He was behind the camera, helping with many different aspects. I had the local fighters, and then I hired professional actors. They were like, I had legit professional actors involved, who like they appear in movies and they appear in like the theater, and they were acting, and they did a kick-ass job. So I could keep on going, and there's one particular scenario where we even had like a bunch of extras. It's like a mass scene didn't happen before. Anyway, I could go on forever, but so many people were involved essentially.
That's awesome. Again, shout out Ranton for just stepping it up. Also, I guess this is something that I think the trailers revealed, right? But what was the decision to bring back Sensei Seth? Tell me about that. Well, what was the sort of negotiation / the talk like to get him back?
So first of all, I was super excited to have him back. We became good friends after season 1, and obviously we used to connect a little bit beforehand. But in season 1, I think we bonded, and then we would catch up once in a while. And I even went to see his performance in Poland last year for the Sumo World Championship. I went there just for that reason, and we hang out a lot. And then I was there to see him and root for him. So I think we bonded even more. But honestly, even after season 1, I was thinking about season 2, and I did approach him. I was like, would you want to do season 2 again? And in retrospect, I don't think that would have been the best decision. I think it made sense to have new, fresh faces. But he just has such a great personality, and I loved having him on the show. I know that people enjoyed seeing him as well. And season 3, I felt like I do want to bring back someone. I want to bring someone who's been in at least one season. And also what was fascinating about Seth's story is that there was a big transformation. So he's now a sumo champion of the United States. That wasn't the case prior. And now he's competing in the World Championship. And he did, without saying how he did, but there was a clear difference between season 1 Seth and season 3 Seth. Like I could see it. Like that dude is different. And to see that transformation and to see him, he's still, the same great personality, but he has a different presence. He has a much higher level of skill set. It was fascinating to see. And part of the USDC, I want to show transformations. I want to share stories. And I thought that's an excellent story to bring to people.
I'm so on board with that. I love that decision because obviously I think you and I get along many reasons, but one of the reasons is we want people to continue expanding their horizons, right? And so if you feature people that, let's say, we've seen before, but okay, this season they've trained new stuff. Oh, they've tried new things. That's really good encouragement for the community because you and I still probably have a small group of people, if not a big group of people who are stuck in their ways. And they still, want to preach their little thing, and they think we're trying to make them look bad. It's like, we're not trying to make you look bad. We just want to encourage everyone to access information, test themselves. It's that simple, but it's also not that simple because you factor ego, it's a lot of things in there, and then people give excuses.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I do feel like that was kind of a past chapter for me in terms of questioning and pointing fingers at things. And I think it had an important part, not only in my life, but also in that social platform of questioning Aikido, questioning martial arts, but I also made a lot of enemies during that period. And eventually I got kind of tired of having those enemies. I also got a little bit burned out from just doing martial arts for my entire life without any solid breaks and just being obsessed about it. And when I started to take a bit of distance, I think I just learned my lessons. I realized I said what I wanted to say, and I felt like I'm just doing the same thing over and over, and it doesn't have a purpose. And I think that's where it was brilliant, and I was so happy that USDC became a thing in my life because suddenly I USDC doesn't question in the same way I used to question martial arts in the past. It explores. It's essentially, it's like, okay, it's like a scientific experiment, essentially. It's like, let's put these martial artists in this environment and let's see what happens. I'm not saying oh, your martial art's not going to work. And we just observe and learn through observing. And I think that's a different conversation. And ever since then, I don't think I had made that many enemies anymore. So it's an enjoyable kind of a transformation for myself as well.
I'm converging on a similar thing. I'm helping my friend Xavier put on a fight league in Florida. And it's exactly the same thing. It's a fight league that's many different rules. So it's not just kickboxing. It's not just Muay Thai. It's not just Sanda. We have fights in all three. And we also have boxing. So it's we're trying to give platforms for people to come and test themselves. So less questioning and less trying to get people to swallow certain pills. It's how about we have a platform? We're going to open it up to everyone. You guys come. You guys come. Right? So you're doing it in the self-defense context. I'm doing it more in the ring sports context.
Yeah.
So it's so funny. One day we might have a collab event. How crazy is that?
Well, anything can happen. I'm open to opportunities. But yeah, no, it sounds exciting, and I think there's a lot that can be tested in the combat sports arena. So I think it's great what you're aiming to do, because UFC kind of started that conversation, but I think now UFC became a very specific beast. Like, it's very clear where UFC begins and where it ends, what skill set you have to do. Like, only elite, highest level fighters get into UFC now. There's no more of, hey, there's a karateka and there's like a Chinese kung fu guy. It's like, they're all MMA guys essentially. But to have something of a different platform like what you're talking about, that's exciting.
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk about some of the lessons you learned from a production angle doing season 3. Tell me about sort of, as you started building the team, how did it work, etc. Was it a lot of or was it like, oh, it was pretty smooth?
I think the actual team building was fairly smooth. So the first person I contacted, I mentioned, was the videographer. So I wanted someone professional to guide the filming, because in the past we were all kind of like amateurs just trying to make it happen. And that alone was just made the production so different. That was actually one of the lessons too, just jumping a little bit ahead. I had like a very packed schedule. I wanted to cover so much. And then in Australia, we would come together to like a set for the scenario, and we would take out our cameras and be like, okay, action, let's go. And now I have a professional videographer, and we come to the set, and he's like, well, okay, I'm going to need about an hour and a half to set up the lights. And I'm like, what? And then every single time, and then it's an hour and a half to set up the lights. And at the end, it's about like 40 minutes to pack the lights and then to move the lights and the cameras. And I was like, oh my God, we're taking so much longer than I thought. And now, obviously, the result is amazing. But I was like, okay, next year when I schedule things, I need to pre-plan for the whole thing. But then coming back to the team, just gathering members. So the main videographer, the next people I contacted, and that was the big question for me, the attackers. Because in Australia, we had Western combatives guys who who do this. They do this all the time. They had the experience. They had the expertise. In Lithuania, I had candidates. I had a group of people that I had in mind. So I wasn't like just going blindly. But I knew that. So essentially, I went to Kudo fighters. And Kudo, for people who don't know, it's not the best known martial art. They wear these helmets and they go all out. They pretty much they fight bare knuckle. There's knees, elbows, takedowns, grappling, headbutts. And so they're very close to self-defense, but they don't do actual self-defense. They don't do acting on top of that. And I'm like, I need these guys to act. I need these guys to, to understand how to go into these scenarios and to adapt. And so it was, I think we had the first meeting in November, and the filming was at the end of May. So that was like 6 months prior. I met with them and I was like, guys, would you want to be involved? And they're like, yeah, let's do this. And so every 2 weeks we kept meeting, training. I was introducing them to how to do the roles. I actually invited a professional actor to coach them on acting, which is actually a game changer. That actually unlocked some good stuff. But then, yeah, it's just so many things we had to go through, and I had to coach them through. And they're amazing fighters. They're like world level competitors, but also it was hard for them, for example, to go. They're very good at sparring light, but once it gets competitive, most of them are champions, like European champion, like world vice champion, etc. And so I tell them like, okay, so in this scenario, you need to pretend to be like a regular dude who like easily gets defeated. And they're like, what? They're like, it's so hard for them. They don't want to lose. And even like the stance, it's so ingrained, the karate stance, the white stance, they couldn't let go of it like for a long time. And I was like, oh my God, are we going to be able to do it? But they were on board. They were amazing. I'm so glad I had these guys. And then, so that was like the step 2. And then obviously, locations and food and catering and lodging. So many people I had to connect with. But that part was, I wouldn't say straightforward, but aside from like, I guess, locations, lodging, one big takeaway, one big lesson for me was that's one of the reasons why I'm planning to announce about myself with the release of the third season in Lithuania, because I would call like a hotel, like for example, I rented an entire hotel, like a 3-story hotel, for the entire week. It was just us, the entire hotel, all the rooms, all the staff, it was just us, just the contenders, just the team members. But then I meet with the owner, and I'm telling him like, yeah, there's this championship, and there's and that, and he's like looking at me like every other person. They're like, what the heck are you talking about? And most people were so skeptical. They thought I'm talking nonsense because they didn't know about the show. They would assume it's so big. By now season 1 and 2 has over 25 million views. And they wouldn't believe me because they thought, oh, I would know if, you would be a big thing. And then it was frustrating to a degree because I would bring then the team and the competitors and everyone. It was like a big production set, like people running around, and we're using radios and lighting and everything. And the people who I talked to before, they're like, oh my God, you were serious. This is big. I was like, yeah, dude, I told you. So yeah, so I learned I need to promote myself a little bit to open some doors. Anyway, there's so many lessons, but in terms of like preparation prior to the production week, those were some of the main experiences.
Dude, I love this. So the first thing that rung really true to me is the lighting, the set, and the stuff you have to do, right? Though as professionals, we forget. And one of the things you definitely see is, I've done very limited acting, but I've done some acting in LA, and it's the same thing. Most of the work is done by we call it below the line people, right? To set up a scene, 1-2 hours is standard. Sometimes it could take like 4 hours. You're just waiting around. Everyone's just, the people on the camera are the ones waiting around, right? And we forget that because we forget that how much of the production is to make it beyond what we usually associate with YouTube professional. There's another level. And we forget that because we associate so much of professionalism with like high quality YouTube stuff. But high quality YouTube stuff compared to Netflix stuff, compared to real film stuff, it's still different distances, different levels.
100%. I totally agree. And I love that distinction between YouTube and kind of the next level, which I think some of the YouTubers are going that way. Like I'm looking at Mighty Mouse's, Demetrius Johnson's videos lately, and he's going top notch. Like he's going for that level. Obviously there's like the traditional Mr. Beast example, but then most YouTube is still more like just grab a single high quality camera, grab a single person, and you like I said in season 1 and season 2, you come and it's like, okay, let's shoot, okay, let's go. But then lighting, for example, is such a big part. Like sometimes we look at like Hollywood movies and TV shows and we're like, why does this look so good? Why does it look so different? Well, it's mostly lighting and the frame of the camera and the quality of the camera and the direction. And so in season 1 and 2 as well, like a lot of the mistakes we did, we were just like, okay, I'm going to stand here, you stand here, and I'm going to stand here. And we're like, okay, let's film it. And then I look at the footage and I'm like, oh my God, this angle is terrible. These two angles are the same. There's a window and suddenly everything is overexposed. And then this time we're like covering mirrors to make sure there's no reflections and making sure, the lights don't get in the frame. Everybody dressed. This was actually my wife's idea. Kudos to her. We all dressed black to make sure like the team members, we all dress black so we don't get, we don't interrupt whatever visuals there are if we get into the frame. Like I had like a professional USDC rash guard and like, we went like full out to make it look professional. But just that takeaway was definitely there. Like if we want to push it to the next level, it involves so much more than just like, let's do better. It's like, no, it's a whole different approach. Just like making sure we all know where we go, we all communicate. It's just a lot more things going on.
And as Rokas was talking, I turn on my light, right? You see the difference, guys? Like there's a difference. They're just little things. Like I never really cared about getting an actual light because again, it's my association. Like, okay, I'm making videos for YouTube. And then I also got my camera. Again, I had this camera for a very long time, but I just never used it because I'm like, I don't think my viewers would appreciate it. But it's the thing. It's like, if you don't think they'll appreciate it, you're never going to do it. So give it to them. And then for yourself, it feels better too. When you look back on things, you're like, whoa, that's good, man.
Like, especially the older YouTube mindset. And I think it's still there and I still appreciate it. But YouTube was very much like, hey, you're a guy who can actually, who does content, which I can imagine myself doing as well. Like I feel like you're a guy I know, and you're doing this video just on the side, and we're both enjoying it. Whereas now, part of YouTube is going to that next level, and even like Mr. Beast, their stories, I think perhaps that perhaps even changed. But for a long time, like he could afford the most expensive cameras in the world, but he would intentionally buy mediocre cameras so he would have that YouTube feel.
Yeah.
But I think that's starting to change, and especially for production, like for example USDC, I did want to deliver. It still has that cheesiness and some kind of campy things happening, because I think that's part of the charm of the show. And I do allow some mistakes to happen. It's not like perfect, and you know there's no more feel of that. It's a YouTuber who made it. But at the same time, I did want to give this, let's call it like a gift to the world, where people watch it and they would feel like everything was given to this. This was not like, oh, let's come together and just film it. I went all out. I did everything I possibly can to make this the best show possible, not only on the level of the competitors and the scenarios themselves, but also in terms of like everything, like even the things you don't see. Like I mentioned, there's some scenes in the hotel, but you know, we spent the entire week there, and you know, it's not a big part of the content. Or even I got some people, I actually got some guests, which I think some people are going to be super excited about, but obviously no spoilers, no reveals. But like, you know, I paid for entire flights and entire stays and everything for some individuals to just come and be like a part of a single challenge. And that's all, you know, it's not like that will proportionally, I will get that money back. It's not like that single appearance in that single episode suddenly will make so many views that investment is going to come back. But I want to give the best possible experience to the viewers so that they would have like the best possible thing. And part of that is just, you know, doing a kick-ass job with lighting and camera so that people could enjoy it and say, wow, you know, this is cool. This is cool on all levels, instead of just like, yeah, you know, this could be better, but I enjoy it. I'm like, no, let's go all out.
Using a camera that's not the best to sort of get that YouTube feel, right? That is very much like a 10-year ago or like a 15-year-old ago paradigm. Because I remember back in the day, the YouTube space in LA is closed now. But back in the day, LA had a YouTube space where it's like, oh, YouTubers passed a certain threshold. Oh, they can book the space, etc. And they would hold events which were usually open to anyone. And so I would go and like I would meet people and they would tell me, yeah, dude, you know, I've stunt doubled for some of the biggest channels at the time. And that was the paradigm. The biggest channels at the time would purposefully use a camera that like wasn't the best quality just to get the YouTube feel. But like you said, that is definitely changing. That is so changing. And in fact, I would argue it's not just changing, but if you don't adapt in production quality, you're going to get left behind. It's like it's like a necessity now. And I have to emphasize that because some days I still don't want to use that camera I showed you. Some days I still want to be like, no, my audience, they're okay. But the truth of the matter is, if the quality gets stepped up, you either adapt or you just are one of those people that start pushing blame on the algorithm, on this, on that, on that. It's like, unfortunately, you got to look at you too. So again, you've inspired me. You've inspired me a lot. The second thing I will say is, one of the things I think that's going to pay off a lot is there are some big YouTubers in Lithuania, right? But I would consider you one of the bigger ones. But like you said, a lot of people don't really realize that because your audience is so international. It's the same with me now that I'm not in LA anymore. Like, I'm probably one of the biggest YouTubers in the DC area, but nobody knows that about me. So like, now that I'm back, I'm almost like shy trying to like be like, oh, by the way, I'm in the DC area, yo. But I've been slowly going to events and just like telling people it's one of those things. I think wherever you are locally, establish as much of a following / a presence. And again, I'm saying this almost to remind myself too, but you're learning it. I'm slowly learning it. It's like locally, I want to have the community support. Something that Rokas and I were talking about before we started the talk is one of the biggest things about happiness that they found all these years is that like your relationships, your community. And so if you know that, okay, my neighbor knows my channel, my neighbor might in an emergency lend some help to me. My other neighbor, you know, wants to be in my videos. Oh, this hotel, would love me to film. Like, that is very powerful. It saves the travel costs. It saves production costs. It saves a lot of headaches. So Rokas, I 100%, I'm down to like promote you whenever, you know that. So like, let's get you to become like the biggest Lithuanian YouTuber and beyond. But we'll start in Lithuania, go to Estonia, go to Latvia, etc.
It's funny because like initially when I came back to Lithuania, because I was mostly traveling prior to it's been like 7 years now, but before I was living in the States and Ireland, and then I was traveling quite a bit, especially when I was my channel started becoming recognized. And when I came back, initially I was a bit confused. I was like, do I want that recognition in Lithuania or no? And eventually I kind of started to not only accept it, but also almost appreciate it. I kind of enjoyed being this kind of a sneaky surprise when somebody would meet me and they're like, hey, so what do you do? I'm like, I'm a YouTuber. And they're like, oh yeah, like how many subscribers you having? Like back then it was like, I don't know, like 300,000. They're like, oh my God, I don't know about you. And I found that to be funny. And I didn't push myself for that. But now as I mentioned, when I organized the championship, and I was expecting much more arms open approach when I would tell like, hey, this project, 25 million views, like famous people from the entire world are coming to Lithuania to do this. And I thought people are going to be like, oh my God, this is so cool, let's do this. But I think part of that is a little bit the Lithuanian mentality. We are not like, in my experience in America, it's, the land of dreams. Like everyone's like, oh, let's do this. This is exciting. This is cool. Everybody wants to appear on camera and, say what they want to say, what they think. And Lithuania is like, no, nobody wants to appear on the camera. Very few people do. Nobody wants to get involved, especially if they don't know what's happening. And so I would call them and they wouldn't believe me, or they would be very skeptical. And I just had a very difficult time. Like part of that was just like kind of upsetting on a personal level. I was like, this is special. Like, trust me, this is so cool. And I got shut down so many times. Like there was one location, again, without revealing it yet, but the big one, like that was like the money shot. That was the main one. And I called 5 different places, and they're not like everywhere around. Like I had to like really look for them. And I had interactions with 5 different owners. All of them shut me down. There was one single sixth one left. And luckily, I managed to convince that person to let us in. And even then, at the end of the filming, he was like, oh my God, this is so cool. He was kind of glad he let us in. But getting shut down 5 times in a row, I almost started to doubt myself. I was like, is this really like, maybe this is not as special as I think. Maybe, this is not as great as I thought. And it feels not great to be unappreciated. And so even on that personal, emotional level, but even also on the logistical level, it was so hard sometimes to convince people. And I had to like tell all these long stories and like have multiple meetings. And obviously like people weren't like making discounts, although, they're getting like rad advertising. Like they're going to appear in front of like millions of viewers. And they're like, there was one specific, very quickly, I'll just rant this through. There was one specific entertaining event I wanted to do, and I was like, "Look, it was like a few $100, right? So it's not a lot. It's not a lot at all. Like I spent a lot of money on most things here, and I was like, look, let us do this entertaining thing, and then we'll promote you." And they're like, "No, we'll give you like a half discount at most." I'm like, "I'm offering you like a $10,000 advertising opportunity for free, and you can't give me like a discount for $300." And I realized, if they would know what is happening here, what they would get, I would have paid probably much less. I would have had to convince people for a much shorter time. Life would have been just much easier. And so I realized, what? I'm sick of this. This is tiring. Just even for the logistical sake, I have to promote myself to some degree in Lithuania, so that when I call people and I'm like, hey, I'm going to film the show, I'd love it if people would be like, oh, that show, I love it. Sure, let's do this thing. And so I'm hoping I'm going to be able to reach that, because it's frustrating.
The DC area, obviously, the US government, a lot of government stuff, NGO stuff. So this area where my parents are, where I spent high school and stuff, this area also has that association. It's not really the place of dreams, right? People will want to work for the federal government, and then it's like, okay, that's my life, and then retirement. And so I remember a story I always tell people is the first time a person, this was a family friend of a family friend, so not a family friend, but he knew one of my family friends. He saw I had such a big channel. the first thing he asked was like, "But what's the ROI?" And I'm like, wow, you are one of those dream killer type people. I get it because this area breeds that. It's like, okay, if you're not making like at least 6 figures and saving for retirement, you're doing something wrong, right? It's a certain mentality. And so probably what you experience in Lithuania is similar, if not almost the same as probably what the DC area is. But then again, it's the thing. No matter how much people put on a facade of like, this is the only thing they got, everyone deep down at heart had dreams, and everyone deep down at heart is rooting for certain people who can step it up. And so I'm telling you that as encouragement. Like, you are getting somewhere. If not, you've gotten somewhere, and you're going to continue getting somewhere. It's the same with me, no matter where I go, or no matter where I go, I know I'm going to build. And so maybe the culture is a little different, but there are always people who will be like, whoa. And I think every season in Lithuania, you're going to get more discounts. You're going to get more deals. You're going to get more people willing to just want to do stuff. I mean, my friend that I'm helping in Florida, it's the same thing. He's building something new. And of course, there's a lot of people downing him. We've had to deal with that last show too. But I told him, I'm like, the key is you get the good footage. You start building the people who believe in you, start building the network, and the ball's going to start rolling. And I think very much we're getting that from you. Like, the ball's already rolling for you.
I hope so. I trust it, and I feel like I believe that too. But at the same time, I always try to be a little bit kind of a distant, a little bit kind of hesitant, a little bit, obviously, just in a way, like I want to be humble about it, but in a very natural way. I'm like, who knows? You never know. Maybe, who knows if I release these episodes. Like, so far, actually, so I hired a full-time editor. The entire summer, this was the next level, which I really wanted to do. I rented an office and hired a full-time editor, and shoulder to shoulder the entire summer, every single day from morning till late evening, we're sitting there editing together. He's the only person in the entire world who saw how the episodes look, and he's excited. He loves it. I love it as well, but I haven't shown it to anyone else. Like, I showed only a couple of snippets to my wife. Everyone's like, hey, show me. I'm like, because the thing is, because this is much higher level of production. So, for example, even some of my YouTuber friends don't even know what I'm talking about. There are the LUTs, like when you film, like
LUTs.
You know about it, right? But for the uninitiated, when you film like with a high-level professional camera, you can film it in this kind of a grayish color, where later you can fine-tune the colors better, and then you need to do the fine-tuning or download the LUTs, etc. And then, so most of our footage is that. So, for example, if I would show it, so I got used to it so much that I'm looking at the half gray footage, and I'm like, oh, this looks great. And we haven't even put the LUTs yet, or we haven't fine-tuned the sounds. And like, I don't want to show it to anyone because they're going to be like, oh, it looks terrible. And I'm like, no, dude, this is not ready yet. So anyway, so very few people, pretty much no one saw it. And I'm like, I love it. The editor loves it. I'm hyped. But I'm like, what if people are going to watch and they're going to be like, well, I think season 2 was better. And I'm like, oh, I don't know. The same was with season 2, by the way. But so you never know. But at the same time, I trust it. Also, too, an announcement. I don't think I said this anywhere on record. So this is the first time. The episodes, there's going to be 8 episodes in total, and they average on 50 minutes each.
Oh, that's so exciting. Yes.
Yeah. so it's like a legit show. There's so much more happening, and I give some more breathing space, but it's just like, there's no fluff. There's no stuff which is like, oh, I want to make the episode longer. It's like, no, that episode is 50-minute long because there's so much interesting stuff that I just don't want to cut out. And so it's a different feel. And I feel like, yeah, it has a much higher sense of, wow, this is something I can sit down and watch and enjoy. And I do hope people will appreciate it.
I am extra excited about the 50-minute length, because it's like, sometimes your stuff's very interesting, right? And people just want that build. The build is very important.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, especially the first 2 seasons, it's established, okay, what the general vibe is. So now it's like, okay, let's get to meet the characters more. Maybe we can even meet the attackers more, just like meet the organization more. So I'm really excited about the length.
Yeah, same. Like, now I look back, because we're making some reels from like Instagram reels for season 1 and season 2. And I look back at season 1, for example, and I was so concerned about retention. I think also with different times, like YouTube now it's evolving now into more of a long format phenomena. Like TV viewership is significantly rising statistically of YouTube, meaning like people watch it like TV. They put it on and they put on, like it's normal now to have like an episode or video which is an hour long. When I was releasing season 1, it was mostly like 10 to 20 minute videos. Like even those episodes were a little bit on the edge of too long, and nobody complained about it. People asked for longer episodes, but I was part of that YouTube group where I was like, oh my god, I need to like make this snappy. I need to cut everything I can cut. And now I'm looking back, I'm like, oh my god, I would make it so different now. There's so many things I didn't include, which, you know, there were so great stories, and I obviously don't want to make that mistake anymore. And whatever cool things happened, I want to deliver that to people. And also too, like what you mentioned about that build-up, I'm definitely investing so much more, because there's a lot of the challenges, they do have that tension, that unknown. And, you know, I want the audience, the viewers, to experience that sense of, oh my god, I'm walking to this and I have no idea what's going to happen, and this guy's walking towards me, and then bam, something happens, instead of like, okay, cut, next person. So yeah, I think it's much more special that way.
Another question for you is, would you ever release like an extended director's cut of season 1 or season 2?
You know, that's a good question. So honestly, actually, it's funny you asked, because today specifically, I was looking through that same season 1, and I was looking at a lot of the footage, like looking for good real material, and I was like, oh man, oh my god, there were so many interesting conversations we had which never made the final cut, which is kind of like almost upsetting. And like even the bus fights, you know, they were super snappy, because it was episode 1. I wanted to engage viewers as much as possible, but we were discussing about like how we used chairs and how everything changes by just, and I included a little bit of that, but like those actual conversations, you know, that never happened. Like the biggest regret I have about season 1, and my wife told me to do it and I didn't. The driver of the bus was this old elderly gray-haired lady, and she was just like having fun and stopping and pushing the car, and I didn't even put her in, and that's such a fascinating, funny moment. And so I am I'm considering to see, so my priority is YouTube and to have this for free for everyone, but I'm not disregarding that. For example, if I get the show on Amazon, for example, like especially season 3, I think it could go straight into streaming, because it's like, you know, even like the length of it, around 50 minutes each. Some are slightly shorter, some actually even longer. And so it's like, it's legit streaming network stuff, and the quality and everything. So I'm considering maybe, you know, I open some doors and see if I can put it out there for more viewers to see, because a lot of people just don't watch YouTube. That's another thing. But then season 1 and season 2, especially season 1, I think it's so made for YouTube, that especially of that era, that I'm like, even if somebody would tell me like, oh, it looks great, put it on YouTube, I'd be like, put it on streaming, and I'd be like, I don't think it's the right thing. But I did consider, and this is just an idea, this is just a thought, but if I would get an open door for streaming platforms, I would potentially just go back and re-edit the entire season 1 and probably season 2 as well. I think there's a lot of things which are left out from there as well, and just make it the way I'm making season 3 now, with like visuals and graphs, with like 3D effects and everything. But on top of that, just more full stories, more narrative, more exploration. And so it's just a thought. It would obviously depend on having open doors to streaming platforms, but I think looking at it now, I would be tempted to do that much more than just to put it in the way it is on a streaming platform. I think it deserves to be more.
I like that idea a lot. I mean, from my personal experience, especially since I had a lot of channels before Fight Commentary Breakdowns, right? Some of my first videos on Fight Commentary Breakdowns were re-edited extended versions of video from other channels. And why did it take off on Fight Commentary Breakdowns, right? So it's one of those things. My experience, and again, I will be the first to admit that some of my understanding is still a decade old, so take what I say with a grain of salt. But the audience, honestly, because they're saturated with so much stuff, they might not even remember some of your best stuff. So if you give it to them, but give it to them in even more of like a bigger pie type of thing, it might be not just like a different experience, but a completely new experience because they might not even remember that first experience. It's just something that I'm not saying the audience is a certain way, okay, but just people are just so busy.
Yeah.
And I had this funny story. So there's something I won't explain this too much, but 10 years ago, something happened to me that my mom mentioned to me. And I'm like, Mom, I don't remember this at all. It involves a potential story with a lady or kicking, but like I don't remember at all. Guys, maybe if Rokas season 3 gets like 25 million views, I'll tell you this story. I'll like do a follow-up conversation. I'll like this is a teaser to like, but like I told my mom, like, I don't remember 1 second of this. This is a whole day thing. I don't remember 1 second of this. So like I'm only telling this because like it's something that should have been important in my mind. I don't remember anything. So imagine people watching content, watching movies, watching videos. How much do they really remember?
Yeah.
So I'm just saying that because I want to encourage both streaming platforms to reach out to Rokas, but also I want to encourage Rokas. Like I'm telling you, probably extended cuts, it'll get a lot of views.
I agree with you, and I think it's there's value in people rewatching, but also what I try to remind myself, because especially like reaching 25 million, we're talking about both seasons. So I guess let's say around, I think season 2 got over 15 million, 17 to be exact, I think. So it's a lot, but at the same time, and it's easy to fall. A lot of that is obviously rewatches because the same person watched 6 episodes, so now it's like 6 divide the 15 or 17 million by 6. But at the same time, it's easy to fall into that delusion or illusion that everybody who were supposed to see it saw it, and it's like, no, dude, there's so many people who would absolutely love the show who haven't seen it, who haven't heard about it. I constantly get comments right now. Each episode still gets views, but they're not like dramatic as they're doing the peak season during the release time. But I still get comments like, "Oh my God, why did I not see this before?" Obviously, somebody loves it, and they just never got across the show. And we're talking about YouTube specifically, YouTube only. And a lot of people, it's hard to understand or to believe that because we're on YouTube all the time, but some people never go into YouTube. Some people never type in martial arts and they don't get recommended this. And so, there's so much more potential. And also too, I have to admit, season 1 and season 2, especially season 1, I had in mind very much the core audience that I had at the moment, like martial artists who are already into self-defense and they already know the things and they just want to see this happen, versus there's so many people who would learn a lot from the show if it was delivered in a different way. So season 3 starts very different from season 1 and season 2, where season 2, even then, the first sentence I say is, we all asked ourselves, what is the best martial art for self-defense? It's like, no, not everyone asked that. It's like only the martial artists do. But season 3, it's like, no, dude, this is for the person. This is obviously for the hardcore martial artist still, but this is also for the person who has nothing to do with martial arts, but they're the people who need to see the show the most. And so I want to draw them in from the very first few seconds because they will benefit from it much more than the self-defense person who did the self-defense for the entire life. And they're like, I know most of this stuff and I enjoy the show, but it's like, great, I love you. But then there's that person who has nothing to do with this. I want them to watch it. And season 1 and season 2 is not really catering to those people, and I would love to include them.
Yeah, I love what you say. This is something that I have a challenge figuring out too, because it's like, who is my audience, right? Like, obviously, people who watch Rokas' channel or watch my channel, you've seen that we played around with, experimented with a lot of stuff, and it's one of those things. It's something I should think about much more too. So, like everything, I'm learning a lot from you because these are things that go on in the back of my head, but sometimes I don't put them like a list next to my computer saying, okay, remember these things. Because like, for example, what is my audience / what is my audience that I want to reach, right? These are things that we all have to think about because we like to think 90% of the people in this world are martial artists who care a lot about our stuff. But the truth is, I would say maybe only 20% of people in this world train. I might be even overestimating it.
Oh yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if it's less. And
yeah.
I had an interesting and kind of eye-opening experience too, doing mid pre-production. So it was like February perhaps, and I decided to do some networking because I started to struggle with, opening doors in Lithuania. And even sometimes I would offer money. I'm like, hey, I'm ready to pay for this, and they're like, no. I'm like, God damn it, this is so frustrating. And so I started doing some networking. I went to some networking events, and this is mostly business oriented, like B2B, like business to business people and business owners. And then I would have conversations with them, and I would get them excited about the premise of USDC. It's like it's an educational show where martial artists I put into various self-defense situations, so you could learn from their mistakes and from their good behavior, so you would become safer, essentially, like in a single sentence. And they would be like, oh, this is very interesting. And they're like, so what happens in the show? And every time I would have to say something from season 1 and season 2, I realized, like, I'm screwed. I'm like, I'm not gonna sell it, because, to credit where credit is due, the scenarios that Jeff came up with, they were great, but they were also kind of still catered more to the hardcore martial artists. Like even the bar fight, it's like a regular person, they're not going to get into a bar fight, they're not going to bars. And for the martial artists, like, oh, so exciting, this is a bar fight. But then I'd be like, well, there's a scenario where you walk out of a shower and there's a bloody guy cutting himself, and there's a guy covered in poop, and they're looking at me, and they're like, they don't want to do anything with this. And I'm like, oh, we're fighting on a bus because you could get attacked on a bus. And they're like, really? And I'm like, God damn it, I can't sell it. And so I was very conscious about this in season 3. When each scenario that I was designing, I wanted to make sure that any person I would tell this to, they'd be like, oh yeah, I can see myself in this. So it's not a big spoiler, but one example that actually happens in season 3, and this is one which I tell now to new people who have nothing to do with martial arts, and immediately they'll go like, oh, okay, interesting, I want to see that. So it's specifically the contender. They have to go to their home, which is downstairs in this kind of alleyway, and there's a guy standing next to the stairs, and as they're walking by, the guy's like, hey, do you have a lighter to light my cigarette? And the contender's like, oh no. And if they do the mistake, they go down the stairs, now they're trapped. The big guy, it's a big guy, starts coming down the stairs, and he's like, hey, actually, you live here, right? And most of the contenders, they're like, yeah. Big mistake, obviously, too. But then the bad guy's like, can I go in your home and light a cigarette? And they're like, shit, what do I do now? What do you say? And this is, it's a little bit hyperbolized. It's a little bit, like, exaggerated. But essentially, it's like, I can totally see that happening. Like, there's a lot of people who are they don't know social norms, and they can totally ask that, and it's like, what would I do in this situation? And so I pitch this to any person that I meet, and they're like, oh, interesting, what should I do? What they did? I'm like, watch the show. so now I feel like I'm finally getting to those people, and that's one of the big goals of season 3.
I love that, Rokas. And this is a good place to end the talk, because we have a lot more conversations to go as the season comes out. But I'll just back up that scenario. One of the reasons, a lot of you guys who follow my channel know, one of the reasons I got back into martial arts training after taking a break was because it happened to me. Guy was asking me for a cigarette, and of course I was smart enough to walk away, but that was just this initial test in me. He saw, okay, I was walking away, but I wasn't like a firm guy who like looked like I could fire. So he started trying to test me more. And then eventually the Kung Fu Jerry came out, and he's like, okay. And then he walked away, but he had about 2 seconds. He could have knocked me out if he were more aggressive. And I missed those cues. He was also, he was trying to be like a safe mugger. So he didn't like go for it. But there were 2 seconds where I kind of turned a little, and I was trying to walk away, and you don't turn your back on someone, right? So like, obviously he's not a trained martial artist mugger. Thank goodness. Thank God that happened. But like, he could have gotten me. And so after that moment, I'm like, I'm training again. I don't care if like I have injuries, I'm training again. That was 2016, by the way, or 2017. But I talk about that story. And like, this is why that scenario that Rokas has for season 3, everyone can relate to, because there's certain cues you get around as you live in big cities that like there's no matter where it happens similarly. People are testing compliance. That's basically the lesson.
And that's my big dream, and that's my big goal in the entirety of the show. But I become much more clear about that goal, and more clear about communicating and expressing it. And especially I think that's going to be much more evident in season 3, is that there's obviously the entertainment element, and that's important because if the show is not entertaining, people are not going to watch it. And then no one is going to, only the hardcore martial artists are going to watch it, and they know that stuff already. I want the person who has nothing to do with this to watch it as well. And then I want them to watch it and to realize how to become safer without even realizing it. And I think even then they will even realize it. Like even my editor, who has nothing to do with martial arts, he's telling me like, oh my God, I learned so much. Like now I'm doing this and I'm doing that and now I'm noticing this. I'm like, oh great. And he's just editing the show. He's not even watching it. But then that's my big goal and that's my big dream, so that people who would watch the show, they would learn how to become much more safer, just as a side effect, just as a side result. And I'm super excited about that part. That's the main driving force for me with the championship.
Guys, I think a lot more interviews to come, a lot more conversations to come. And Rokas, I'm so excited about season 3. So we'll have more talks as we get more updates about the release and stuff like that. What do you think is the release date, by the way?
It is actually official. November 2nd is the first episode is going to be released, and then 8 episodes are going to be released weekly. Starting from this Sunday from now when we're filming, I'm going to start releasing interviews with each contender, answering audience questions and introducing them. So I think that's kind of exciting too. That's kind of a build-up, a lead-up. I'm actually going to reveal the trailer in Salt Lake City on October 3rd or 4th. There's a fight conference there. So if anybody's around, come in. And I'll also give a presentation, like an hour-long talk live about the making of the USDC. The trailer is going to be revealed there. And I know most people are not in Lithuania, but on October 18th, I actually rented an entire cinema, and we're going to have a premiere in a cinema. So there's still some spots available. If somebody wants to come, they can shoot me a message and I'll hook them up.
Exciting stuff, guys. All right, guys, a lot more to come. Again, Rokas, thank you so much for this first talk.
Thank you, man. Thank you.